Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Market Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, October 6th. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Here is the whole risk disclaimer. Also, if the video is a little bit blurry, YouTube does take a little bit of time to render their high definition version of the video. Sometimes I do send it out a little bit too early before that's ready. Just give it a little bit more time. So theme of the day, a couple things. I could have a couple things written down here, but leaving, where we left off the video yesterday, yesterday's end of day video, we just, I talked about today could kind of be a wild card, and I think it certainly lived up to that. Right? We closed it was very inconclusive in terms of where we closed yesterday. So, I was kind of just, I thought that today was open for anything. Was I expecting to start the day down 1%? No, I wouldn't say that. But whenever I don't like how we close for the day, or if there's not a substantial level that we came back to. I do take off positions, which is what I did yesterday, right? And I talked a little bit about that. I took off about a few of these positions just to kind of slim myself down a little bit for a day where I just didn't think that there was a lot of edge, in terms of what could transpire for the day. So that helped me a little bit, to kind of come in a little bit lighter. But, I do, when the market is doing this kind of volatility back and forth as we've had, and I know a lot of people are now, talking about that. We talked about this in yesterday's video, since the end of the month, down 1.2%, then up 1.2%, then down 1.3%, then up 1% yesterday. And now we're kind of in the middle, but certainly there was volatility. So, with this type of move that we're happening, and we will just have to be patient to see if the volatility kind of starts to die down a little bit in terms of these back and forth action. And so patience is what we stressed. When I sent out the Tribeca Trade Group midday video to members, I talked about that specifically, and I mentioned a couple things that I was looking for. And one of them is a breadth improvement. Now, of course, we got a really nice rebound and a nice close at the end of the day, so that's a good thing. And we are back inside. We're basically right back testing at this bottom of value. So, I think a little bit better picture than yesterday. However, I think you still, like I said, you do have to be patient with this volatility and realize what it gives you. For example, I am more of a swing trader, right? And when I have new members come in, they usually ask me, because I do both. I do swing trading and I do day trading. I do a lot more, so on average, I probably do about 80% swing trading and 20% day trading, or sometimes it's 85-15. But as I tell new members, it really depends on the markets, on what the market is doing. If it's going to move around like this and have big intraday swings, I'm probably going to day trade a little bit more. If I'm set up that way to do it, not every day, because I actually did not day trade that much today. Probably a little bit more yesterday. By the volume of my trades on the trade blotter, which I'll go back to in just a second. But again, it's one of those situations where you have to take what the market is giving you, and that's intraday volatility. Now, could that change? It could. I mean, the VIX actually closed. We closed down in the VIX for the day. All right, so that's another observation. It seems like the volatility is starting to kind of move down. We've talked about that I really didn't know how to interpret yet. The volatility that we've seen over the last week has not been as high as this, right? So it's a bit of a divergence, right? And I think that is kind of playing out a little bit more, that it's now telling us something, that the volatility, even though we kind of feel it on a day-to-day basis, what the actual measure of the volatility, by the implied volatility in S&P contracts is less than what it was back in the middle of back on 920, right? So that, again, that should tell us something, right? It should tell us something that the volatility is actually going down and relative to where it was. So it's a bit of a divergence, right? So that's just one thing. And again, in these videos, I go over a lot of different factors. There is no one factor that is going to basically tell you exactly what is going to happen, right? It's a bunch of pieces of a puzzle, right? And you try to basically put together a decent picture with those pieces. But I always find it funny because sometimes I will tweet something out either about seasonality, or I will tweet something out about the VIX, or credit spreads, and people will latch onto that, thinking, okay, that's the one and all thing that I need to look at. That's not how it works. It's a bunch of different things, and the more that you have several things lining up either bullish or bearish, then it kind of helps you, put together a viewpoint, about how you're going to tackle the market from a bigger picture. And then, of course, we drill down into single names. But that's how the process basically starts. Speaking of which, right? So just couple more other things to go through here. Right, we talked about the volatility day to day. Yes, I do want to mention credit spreads. Right, let's see where this closed. So this is IE. So I use IEI over HYG. Right, and when this goes up, right. So if you want to go back to, we'll bring this up from the beginning of 2020. Obviously credit spreads blew out. Right, so they're creeping up a little bit here. It's not a cause for concern yet, but we really haven't seen too much of a move. Now, it does make sense given everything that's going on right now that credit spreads would be widening out a little bit, but it is not. It's so far it's nothing. It's not a concerning issue, but we'll continue to monitor that. Right, I look at credit spreads, what's going on in the high yield market. Versus treasuries. I look at this a couple times a week, right, to see if there's any change here, right, because it's a big no-no when you start to see credit spreads widen. Then you've got some risk in the system. All right, I mentioned a couple other things. The other thing, since we're on fixed income, bonds. A couple things that I've noted here with the bonds, and that's not the picture of the bonds. So 30-year bonds, they did go, in the beginning of the day, spreads were going higher again. Price was going lower. Notice what this did today. Now, again, it's still downtrend, right? But you get a nice hammer bar, and we'll see if we could build off of that. The other thing is the 1 hour chart. And if you've been watching my videos over the last week, I've talked about how that we got close to it last week of taking out this version point of control. Again, why are these important? Well, you could kind of see the last couple ones taken out. Specifically today, you had a reversal off of that. You also had this for a small time last week, although that reversal didn't really stand for too long, other than a day, right? And then yields went higher again, prices went lower. So we'll see if this, there are of course ones lower, right? But right now we're back in value. So again, this type of thing, like when we look at bond, when I discuss bonds like this, I spend more time on them when they're moving. But do I really want to be looking at every single tick in the bonds? No, I don't. But we know things really are affected by them. And if you look at to see how some of the moves, and that's another thing. I was talking about this earlier too. But keep in mind with bonds, it's not exactly a one-for-one relationship on a day-to-day basis. Over time, I think that there is a relationship, right? So, for example, when yields go higher, right, it's good for banks over the long term. But there's too much emphasis, in my opinion, where people are saying, "Hey, well, I don't get what's going on in the market today. Bonds did this. Why didn't growth stocks do that?" Right? You have to look at a bigger picture than just one day. So it's important. So these are the kind of points that I think are important, because I think once you kind of bring this analysis to people, then they're looking for it to hold up every single day. And I don't think it does. For example, yesterday, bonds were down and yields went up, and growth stocks still, the Qs were outperforming. So that relationship didn't hold that yesterday, right? But over time, on average, right, when you look at a weekly relationship, then it usually there is usually something to it. Again, it's not 100%, and there's very little things that are 100% in trading. All right, so if we take this forward, there was a lot, and I'm going to talk about all the single stock movers in just a minute, but I want to talk about a couple of sector movers. All right, interesting. Utilities had a big move today. They were up almost 1.6% for the day. That's pretty big outperformance considering if you look at what the SPYs did. I think SPY was up 40 basis points. Right, Qs. It's nice to see all these things go green on the day. Not so much small caps, but right, Qs were up 60 basis points. So you got some nice outperformance, and it looked like that this was due for a bounce. Right, coming all the way down like this. So we'll see if this retakes the 20-day moving average. Right. So far you got a decent bounce. And a couple things that if you wanted to look a couple of names within, I know this is more boring names, but an American Waterworks is a pretty good company. Right. NEE. Right. Nexstar Energy is a pretty good company. So I like to have a couple things like this in my portfolio that are a little bit, even though it was up 2%, it's a little bit of a slower mover where I don't have to watch it every 2 seconds like some of these movers. So we'll talk about some of the most talked about stocks of the day. Of course, Affirm, you're going to hear probably will be the most quoted on Twitter. I would think stock symbols up 20% on the day. Just huge move, huge volume. Managed to get to take out the previous high here, also back above that value. There's a couple names that I've been kind of grouping together. Of course, like the famous acronym for the internet stocks, the FANG acronym. Right? I was trying to create another acronym for four stocks that I think kind of move a little bit together, right? So Affirm, Upstart, right, which I got long today on the move. You're going to see this in a few charts that I mentioned today. Nice move up. About a week and a half of digestion, letting that 20-day moving average kind of catch up to the price, or the price coming down to that, and now you got a nice bounce. Another one that I put in this group, although I didn't trade this one, I still have a little bit of a piece of this one on in my trading account, is INMD. Didn't retake the moving averages, but again, it just may take some time, especially after that ugly candle on Monday. And then another one, the fourth one that I look at, same situation here, and I think we talked about this one briefly in yesterday's video. I liked how it closed. We just didn't get to see this, so I am now long this one as well, Asan. So I don't have an acronym for those four names, but right now that's kind of how I'm looking at some of these things. Might as well talk about a couple other names that start with A. Apple. Right, we did see some call buying in this today. It did break into value, so it's trying to make the turn. And I kind of say, why not? It's moved from 157 down to 141. We're going to hear about the iPhone numbers. I would imagine that people are upgrading. Maybe not everybody. I haven't upgraded my phone yet, but I might. Because the other thing is, just because there's not new features, or amazing new features, the amount of time that everybody spends on their phone, these phones get beaten up. So sometimes you just need a new one just because it's new, and you kind of and it's nice to get something that's maybe a little bit faster, has a little bit better battery life to it. So anyway, that's my thought on that, and I wouldn't be surprised if this continues to bounce further. DOCN, also another high flying growth name. DigitalOcean found the 20-day moving average and bounced quite nicely. We're now over this, and this looks primed for a move up to 87, back up to the top of value or close to it. All right, and of course another name of the day, besides I would put this right up there with Affirm, was Cloudflare. Geez, what a move! Really nice continuation after yesterday's move, and found some resistance at the top of value at 134. But man, look at the volume on the last 2 days. That's a powerful move, and I kind of feel like Cloudflare does this. Now, shame on me. I try to position in here for this thing, and the volatility. Every time I started a position in this thing, if it was earlier this week or last week, I think I tried it twice, and my timing was horrible. And as soon as I went into it, the stock would go lower. So my stop was pretty tight, and I got stopped out in it. So I really missed this one, but what can you do? It's a little bit part of trading. Let me go to a couple other names. You're just not going to do everything perfect. I wish I did in that sense, but yeah. BILL, not a bad chart. I kind of like some of the other ones that I mentioned just before this a little bit better, but it did its job here, right? It came in and retested top of value last week, and it held. Right, and it had a little bit of back and forth action, and it's back above all the short-term moving averages. So I think it's worthy of a shot versus maybe 267 stop. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe last year. I'm referring to these stocks as last year's growth stocks. Right? What do I mean by that? Shopify. Just really haven't heard too much about Shopify lately. It's been quiet. It's kind of, the price action has not acted very well. However, it's at a nice spot to maybe try a trade. Looking for a move from here, maybe to 1396. So I did get long this name versus, I like simple trades. Right, and the simple trade here is, looking for this thing to go up to 1396, and my stop price is at the 200-day moving average. Right, so that's it. Just looking for a little bit of a scalp trade. But yeah, we haven't really seen these stocks that were very strong last year really act the same, right? And there's a handful of these things. TTD is one of them. Roku is another one, which Roku did have a nice day too. There was some nice call buying in the beginning of the day, and we saw that a little bit yesterday too. Just a little bit of calls in Roku, and definitely this morning as well. So, again, these things at this point I think are worthy of a bounce. Would I really put them on here for like long term? No, I think they're just due for a bounce. But again, that's up to everybody's individual opinion. Another name that we talked about yesterday. Where did this thing get to? Right to the level that we talked about. Right, and it actually got above that. So first, the initial reaction on this VPOC. Look at that perfect tag of this, and this was in the pre-market session or aftermarket session yesterday, and it tagged at 158 and reverted back, but it held up pretty well, and impressive, right? Impressive. So that was I would say yesterday's name. All right, and just a couple things to kind of two more names quickly. I thought this was impressive too. There was an analyst day for Marvell, up 7%. Finally, something good in the semi space happened today. Really nice move from this level down here. So again, these analyst days are, they can really be a nice driver for the day. Speaking of which, tomorrow Tesla has their general shareholder meeting, I believe. Let's see, am I phrasing that correctly? So this will be one to watch. Annual general meeting, excuse me. Yep, annual general meeting. So now I've seen calls a number of days this week, particularly this week, right in the morning again. It seems like it is a pattern that I'm seeing calls in the morning. However, I'm also seeing puts going up. Not so much today, but I saw puts yesterday, and I've seen them like a couple times in the last week. So it's going to be an interesting one. I would feel a little bit more compelled because sometimes I let the technicals be my judge, even if there's an event that's coming up. I would like to see this thing get back above 786. Right, it's stalled out a couple times this week. I still think what I said last week, and what I said in the beginning of this week is that I think there's a decent amount of selling. It may not just be the ARK funds because they have been lightening up on Tesla, but it could be some other funds too. Considering that every time this thing tries to get on the upper end of the range, it gets hit pretty decently, right? Here, and it didn't even make it out of value today. So it was a bit of a it was a quiet name today. All right, guys, I think that's good enough for today's video. That's a lot of names. Always at the end of the videos, I try to give a bottom line. Here's, by the way, what I traded. I got stopped out in one trade this morning. Nvidia, I had a tight stop on that one. You could see just $1. So I kind of just let things kind of shake out a little bit before we started to see some things. But I think I covered all those trades already. So yeah, so bottom line is that it looks this was a step in the right direction, right? Maybe we'll start to see some of those selling programs abate a little bit, the heavy selling programs that we've seen here and there. So that's what I would be looking for tomorrow, and just looking for a build of what we've seen today. I'm much more positive going into, I think, going into tonight's overnight session than yesterday. So we'll see how that will materialize, and we'll go from there, guys. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.